This edition of the Duke Basketball Report podcast is brought to you by Bird Campbell. Bird Campbell, a pair of Dukies who are also lawyers. If you're looking for legal help in the states of Florida or Texas, please reach out to them at birdcampbell.com. Duke fans, welcome to episode 142 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. I am your host this week, Jason Evans. I am joined, as always, by my partners in crime in Durham, North Carolina, Sam Klein. How you having a good day there, Sam?
Yeah, things are going great here. Duke had a lovely come from behind win yesterday, so everyone's feeling good.
Yes, they did, and in the D.C., in the capital, with a lot of snow, right, Donald? You got a lot of snow around you, don't you?
Yeah, we got about 3 inches overnight. It's starting to come down again right now as we record. We're supposed to get another couple inches today. But, I mean, I'm from Michigan, so this is what we call flurries. Yeah, it is definitely nice to wake up and see some of the cold white stuff on the ground here in D.C.
So, gentlemen, we are going to start by recapping the games of this past week. And, of course, the Blue Devils beat Wake Forest earlier in the week, 87-65. But let's put that aside for the moment to talk about what happened yesterday, which was Duke 80, Florida State 78. Cam Reddish with the buzzer-beating game winner in a game that was truly remarkable because Zion Williamson got face-palmed in the eye and did not play the entire second half of the game. Blue
Jason,
Devils come from behind.
I might quibble with your description of face-palmed and might describe it as clawed.
Yes, yeah. I think that would be more accurate. You are correct about that. But the Blue Devils managed to find a way to win anyway on the road against a very, very impressive opponent. Florida State's a Sweet 16, grade 8 quality kind of team. And they were on. They were having a very good day, and Duke won anyway, which is a great sign. Sam, I'm going to start with you, but let's, I want to do this. Let's compartmentalize this. I want to begin by talking about Cam Reddish and the shot, and then let's move to a lot of other stuff that happened in the game. But let's start at the end. Cam's shot, and I'll toss to you this question. So Terrence Mann of Florida State does not bother to cover Cam Reddish on the final shot. What are the odds? Wide open, no one near him, no one contesting the shot. What do you think the odds were that Cam hits that shot, an open three-pointer with no one contesting him at all? 80% or more?
Maybe not that high, but still much higher than his regular 3-point percentage, which has been hovering in the 30s this year. Getting that clean look with the ball passed right to him. Trey Jones made an excellent pass around. I think it was Chris Kumaji was defending him on the out of bounds play, so he had to sort of contest with that. But he threw a great pass to Cam Reddish, who fired it immediately. I mean, it was a perfect feed. The two interesting aspects of it that made it easier for Reddish in that moment. One was that RJ Barrett, despite Cam Reddish having a great game, RJ Barrett had a tremendous offensive game and is clearly Duke's primary offensive threat, especially with Zion Williamson not on the floor. So Florida State was keyed in on Barrett and making sure that he was sort of standing in the corner for what might have been a catch and shoot, but was more likely a catch on the baseline and drive it in over the course of 2 seconds opportunity. So Florida State was really concentrated on defending that primarily, and secondarily, they were focused in general on the rim and in the paint because Duke was only down 1. They only needed to score a 2-point basket to win the game, and a 3-pointer, while something that the Blue Devils are obviously practicing a lot, is not necessary here. So I guess Florida State was going for the high percentage defensive opportunity, which was pack the guys close to the basket, let guys remain on the perimeter. It did seem like a little bit of a failure though on Florida State's part when Duke's 3 perimeter players did a little weave at the beginning of the out of bounds to open Cam Reddish. So he was wide open, ready to take the shot, and it was a perfect game for for this to come his way, for this opportunity to come his way, because he, for the first time, I think in weeks, looked very comfortable offensively. He made a number of great shots, and this just sort of capped it off for him.
Donald, what was your take on the final shot and on Cam's whole game? I mean, Sam opened the door there. I agree that what a great time for Cam Reddish to rediscover his stroke and his confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. 5 of 8 from 3 on the game, 23 points. But going back to the play, that's a hell of a play call by Coach K. I mean, just think about all these moving parts that you guys were describing, but add to the fact that, they were zeroing in on RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett goes all the way to the corner, bringing not one but 2 defenders with him. One guy was completely on him. Kumaji's guarding the Trey Jones on the inbounds, and Trey Jones just makes a slight, head fake towards, as if to indicate that he's going to pass the ball underneath into the paint, where there's 3 Florida State guys who are collapsing when they see this. All of those guys shift just so ever so slightly to the left, and that opened up the passing lane that Trey Jones had to get to Cam Reddish, who was wide open. So, not only was it a great play, it was one that was incredibly well executed by everybody on the court. All of these little things make this moment happen. So, hats off to Coach K.
Have you seen the video of Coach K in the huddle before Duke goes back out there, and he looks like he gives the team all the instructions, and then you can clearly see him look at Cam and say, "You ready?"
Yep. And that play, and that's yes. The thing is, it's not like that was a secondary option. That play was set up to get the ball to Cam Reddish, and that is incredible because again, he knew that everybody in the gym thought that RJ Barrett was going to get the ball, and that would have been the right call as well. But to make it so a play makes it so that Cam Reddish is that wide open, that is execution by the players. It's a great play called by the staff, and everything came together in that play. But going back to the whole game as a whole, Cam Reddish, welcome back. Like we needed that performance from him. That was, in my opinion, that was his best performance of the season. The one place that he didn't really do well was at the free throw line, which is where he normally gets a lot of points. He was 0 for 4 from the charity stripe, but everything else, he was very good on defense. 5 of 8 from 3-pointer, as I said before, those sort of things. And they were also, plays that, and there was that one play where he's just ripped the ball out of the Florida State player's hands, ran down the court, and then did a running stop and pulled up for a 3-pointer and just drilled it. Like that's the sort of confidence that he was getting in this game. And that's what we need from him, especially this week. We got, 2 good games this week. But another thing I want to talk about, RJ Barrett, 32 points. It was just his ability to score in any different way is really what makes him. And that's why, he's one of the best players in the country. And you saw that yesterday when Zion went down, they couldn't do anything with Zion at all when he was in the game. Zion was really playing very well.
He was owning the offensive boards. And by the way, once he went down, Duke's rebounding
went down with it. Yeah.
My gosh. Not only did we not get any more offensive rebounds, by the way, in second half with no Zion, Trey Jones got 2 offensive rebounds. Cam Reddish got 1. That's it for offensive rebounds for Duke in the second half. And defensive rebounding, Florida State was killing us, just killing us on their offensive boards, our defensive boards. I actually think Marquise Bolden, to some extent, saved the game because Javin DeLaurier did not grab a single rebound. I thought Bolden, our 2-headed center monster between DeLaurier and Bolden, even though Bolden didn't have gaudy stats in this game, he was at least getting in Florida State's way. He was grabbing some defensive boards. He blocked a couple shots. He was essential to this Florida State team that was just grabbing rebounds and dunking on us left and right.
Yeah, and one final point before I give it back to you guys is you were talking about that, them just dunking on us. That length was really a problem for us once Zion went down. It was almost like when Zion was in the game, they respected his ability, his blocking ability, his rebounding ability enough that they weren't really challenging him. They were going after some of the other guys in the paint. So this is one of the longer teams we'll see all year as far as their leaping ability, their athletic ability, and just how many big guys they throw at us. But at the end of the day, I think the team, just kept staying close. And even though, Florida State would go on a couple runs, our guys were right there with them. Anytime there was an alley-oop that would get the crowd going wild, we would come back down and RJ Barrett would hit a three. Cam Reddish would hit a three. Trey Jones would make a great pass and inside for, a layup. Like those sort of plays are what veterans do. And we were playing a very veteran team, as we discussed last week. These guys play like veterans yesterday. And I think that is why we are still number one in the country.
Well, first of all, I'm going to go back to Sam in a second, but I want to mention how improbable it was that Duke would win this game. I mean, for Florida State, Cabangeli has a career game. The kid will never play that well again, in his life. He was awesome. Phil Kofer, who is a Duke killer, just absolutely owns the Blue Devils. By the way, Kofer, they say that he's 22 years old. I think he's 35. That dude has been around forever, and he looks like Greg Oden out there.
Hey, they mentioned the stat about him. He, Phil Kofer, has played against both Jones brothers.
Yes,
that's pretty funny. Yeah,
not a lot of guys who've done that.
Wait. So he's been because he took a red shirt.
He took a red shirt in the middle. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Phil Kofer, by the way, 7 total 3-pointers on the season, but he hits 5 against us. And but the most significant reason that I thought this was, and of course Zion missed the second half. But the most significant reason I thought Duke wouldn't win this game, as I was watching it being played out, was that the refs were letting Florida State play their style. This was unbelievably physical, and we mentioned in the preview, Florida State full of juniors and seniors, redshirt seniors, stuff like that. Their entire roster is like 22, 23 years old. Duke's playing nothing but 18-year-olds. And the refs really let Florida State bang on us a lot. It was an incredibly physical game. And I just thought it was a game that, when you lay out all those facts, Cabangeli is going to have a career game. Phil Kofer is going to go off and hit as many 3-pointers in this game as he's hit all season long. Florida State's going to be allowed to play their style. Duke's going to be without Zion Williamson for the entire second half. And it's in Florida State. It's really our first true road game, because the Wake Forest game earlier in the week, it's not the atmosphere. I mean, the announcers, Dick Vitale, kept on talking about he'd never seen a Florida State crowd this hyped, this pumped up. It was incredibly unlikely and a testament to this Duke team that they won the game. And Sam, before I go back to you for a couple more comments, I do want to point out, I thought the hidden stat that no one is talking about, that's the most important statistic in this game, the reason we won this game, fast break points. Florida State only got 4 fast break points. Florida State's a team that likes to play with pace. They are a team that likes to get easy baskets. They got a lot of easy baskets on lobs and offensive rebounds, but they did not get any fast break. And Duke does an incredible job of preventing teams from getting easy baskets on the fast break. Duke got 21 fast break points. I mean, we're talking a quarter of our baskets are, those easy run out fast break baskets that we get every game. And, in a tight game against a really good team on the road, getting easy buckets, that's the ball game. That's why we win.
And Jason,
what else you got on this?
To piggyback on that, you sort of talked about 2 issues that kind of come together in the game plan. Duke is getting back on defense in this game because Zion's not in there to wreak havoc on the offensive boards. Duke was sort of committed to letting Florida State have most of the rebounds and not rebounding their shots to get second chance points, because they knew they had to get back and because they knew they had to combat Florida State wanting to run out. So I would imagine that was an intentional part of the game plan. And Duke knows that even without Zion on the floor, it still has a good enough defense that they can stop Florida State in the half court. I think that some of those Florida State backdoor cuts and layups and dunks are concerning and something that the Blue Devils are going to want to work on, but there aren't a lot of teams that can execute that as well as Florida State can, just given their size and athleticism. Even among the ACC teams, they're going to be one of the biggest. So that aspect of it, I think, is probably going to vary game to game about how much Duke is committed to the offensive boards versus getting back on defense. I did want to come back to the crowd real quick, Jason, because you talked about how good the crowd was, and Dick Vitale mentioned it too. This game, and you know me, I'm not one to be complimenting Maryland for anything. This game felt like one of those Maryland games from the mid or early 2000s, where the Maryland crowd would be just all over the Blue Devils, and this Florida State crowd was ready for it. They know they've beaten Duke a few times recently when Duke's been ranked number 1 in Tallahassee, and they're not afraid of this team. And the crowd was all over it. They were showing it. So really a great effort from them, even though Duke was able to overcome it. I did want to come back and make one more observation. We've talked before about how Coach K loves to shorten the bench throughout the season. And, early in the year, like Alex O'Connell will get minutes and Jack White will get minutes and everyone's getting minutes. And Justin Robinson's going to play 6 minutes a game and be allowed to take a 3 every night. Not on this night. Alex O'Connell played 6 minutes, even though Zion was limited to only 15 minutes, given that he sat the entire second half with the eye injury. RJ Barrett and Trey Jones both played the entire game for Duke. And then you've only got 5 other guys out there who are rotating around. So Duke's clearly limiting the bench minutes, and we're seeing the exact rotation kind of come into fruition here. I think that we talked a little bit on the last show about the potential for Cam Reddish's slump to continue and what might happen to the starting lineup and the rotation as a result of that. I think that you're seeing here what you saw on Saturday was basically Duke's final version of the rotation, minus Zion, playing in limited minutes. It's really going to be the starters, the 4 freshmen in Delorier, with just Bolden and Jack White coming off the bench. Alex O'Connell, it seems like, isn't going to get a ton of burn down the stretch this season, unless for some reason Duke needs no one's shooting well and Duke needs that offensive spark. I think you're just going to see these 7 guys rotating in and out. And honestly, it seems okay. The defense doesn't suffer as a result of it. The Duke isn't extremely foul prone. That's been one of the criticisms in the past about the limited bench, is that if multiple Blue Devils are down with foul trouble, then who do you put in? Do guys have enough experience? I think this really came into play in that 2016 season, the Brandon Ingram year, when every game sort of felt like, oh, they have to fend off the fact that they're only playing with 6 guys, and if one guy gets in foul trouble, then everybody else needs to be totally on their game. But this is it. This is the rotation we're going to see likely for the rest of the season. That's just kind of it's kind of the, I think that's the big takeaway from this game, is the shortening of the bench.
I mean, I will say this, and we're going to get to the Wake game in 1 second. And Donald, be prepared. I'm coming to you on Wake in half a second. The only thing I would say about Alex O'Connell's minutes is I think it was impacted by 2 factors. One is Cam Reddish was clearly having a great game. Look, he finishes with 23 points, 5 of 8 from 3-point range. I think O'Connell's minutes are going to fluctuate with Cam's minutes to a large extent. So if Cam's playing really well, that's going to limit Alex O'Connell. I also think Florida State is a bad team for Alex O'Connell to play against. They are incredibly athletic. Arguably, I'm trying to think really quick about the other teams we're going to play this year. Florida State may be the most athletic team and longest team that we're going to play all season long. And I think that they are just sort of a bad matchup for Alex O'Connell in general. Top of my head, Florida State, most athletic team we're going to play all season. I think that's probably accurate. So I think it doesn't bode well for Alex O'Connell coming into this game, and then with Cam playing really well, I think that limited it even more. And then the other weird thing about it is not having Zion actually meant we needed more scorers on the floor, and I think that also works against Alex a little bit. I mean, Cam's more creative; he's going to do more offensively for the most part than Alex O'Connell is. So with no Zion, suddenly we're limited in the number of sort of non-scorers that we can have on the floor at any one time. And I think that also limited Alex O'Connell just a little tiny bit. That said, I don't completely disagree with you. I think he's clearly the 8th man, and there are going to be plenty of games where the 8th man gets less than 10 minutes. All right, let's let's move. Let's put Florida State aside. Great win. Way to go, guys. Duke played their first true road game earlier in the week when we took on the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Wake's probably the worst team in the ACC. I think few people would dispute that.
You don't have to. You don't have to qualify it as probably. Wake is the worst team in the ACC.
There we go. Donald, give me your takeaways from what was a very, very easy win. Sort of competitive in the first half, but I mean, Duke's a second half team. We trounced them very early on in the second half, and it was all over.
Yeah. Well, you have to start with this stat line: 30 points, 10 boards, 5 assists, 4 steals, and 1 block in 32 minutes. Yep, guys, that's Zion Williamson, the first player to ever go 30, 10, and 5 under Coach K. So add that to the list of accomplishments that he's done already in his short college career so far. He was all over the place. They had no answer for him. He was Zion. That's pretty much the best way to put it, and everyone knows what that means. But I also want to highlight a couple guys off the bench that had great games, in my opinion. Jack White had 5 blocks, and was everywhere on the defensive end of the floor for us, especially in the second half when we start to pull away. As you mentioned, Jason, it was kind of a struggle in the first half, and it was kind of back and forth. But once the second half hit, it was we were in gear 9 and they were in gear 2, and that was the end of it. But Jack White really contributed to that, and Marquise Bolden, 12 points and 6 boards, I thought had his best game with us this year since that Auburn game. But was really, really, really good for us, and especially there's points where we had a couple of guys that were really like, it kind of seemed out of sorts on the defensive end. He was able to just clear out boards and really start our transition, which led to a lot of points that don't show up on the stat sheet. So I want to give a shout out to those two gentlemen, but specifically Zion for going 30, 10, and 5 and just really manhandling everything, including the stat sheet.
So, by the way, regarding Zion Williamson, I said this. I think I said to you guys. I said it to someone after the game. If an alien from another planet, a planet that has stronger gravity or something like that, dropped down on Earth and started playing basketball, he would resemble Zion Williamson. I mean, I'm at a loss for words to describe his combination of athleticism and skill. He quite literally is playing a different game than everyone else. The limits upon human capability that other people operate under don't exist for him. And seeing him hit 3 out of 4 3-pointers, opposing ACC coaches watching that Wake Forest game, watching Zion hitting shots from the outside, were getting physically ill. They were having to go into the bathroom and throw up because I can't imagine. I don't know how you stop this dude if he's hitting 3-pointers.
Jason, I think it's Jason. I just want to mention that I think it's, I think we should be honored that Zion decided to come to Duke and play basketball while he is, waiting for Avengers Endgame to come out, because I know that's a big year for him. Thanos is coming back, and his name is Zion Williamson. So I think it's great that he decided to take a break from, snapping at everyone, half the world, to play basketball for us.
But by the way, so you talked about the incredible stat line: 30 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, a block shot, 3 out of 4 3-pointers. There's an aspect of his stat line that I wanted to mention that is just insane. He had 30 points on 16 field goal attempts. Now, ordinarily, first of all, that's crazy. That's just a stupid number. 30 points on 16 field goal attempts. You just, you don't hear about that.
Like, just think about that number, right? Like, if they were 2-pointers and he made all of them, that's 32 points. Like,
yeah. So, but ordinarily, a guy who does a crazy number like that, you look at his line, you go, oh, wait a second. He was 10 of 12 on free throws or something. It's a guy who has a bunch of free throws that sort of skews the number of field goals, and he's picking up points where he's not actually picking up field goal attempts. Aha. Not Zion. Zion was 1 of 1 on free throw attempts. He only took 1 free throw. So he scored 30 points on 16 shots with only 1 free throw. That's
and it was an and one.
He's crazy efficient. He's unbelievably efficient. it's just, like I said, he's an alien from another planet. And the last thing before I get it over to Sam, I thought Duke's shot blocking, I mean, we've talked about it a lot this season. I thought it was especially on display in this game against Wake Forest. We had 13 blocked shots. There were multiple possessions where Wake would take a shot, we'd block it, they'd get the ball back, take another shot, and we block it again. And that's just demoralizing if you're an opposing team. Jack White had 5 blocked shots. The guy that Jack was covering, it felt like could not even get the ball to the rim most of this game. This team is just, and by the way, early in the game, in fact, I think it was like there was like the second possession or something like that. Childress, Brandon Childress, was running out on a fast break, and Zion was chasing him down, and Brandon ends up missing a wide open layup because he was so certain he was going to get his shot blocked by Zion Williamson. He sort of took it awkwardly because he was like, "Oh shit, this guy's coming. The alien from another planet is coming to get me," and so he blew the layup. There is a sense of fear when you put up a shot against the Duke Blue Devils because we're coming to get it. Sam, what you got from the Wake game?
Just to add that during the game and during Jack White's superior defensive performance, I think I started referring to him as Blockadile Dundee. And I don't know. I feel good about it. I didn't know at what age I was going to transition to becoming one of the old weird DBRs who comes up with bad nicknames for players. But here I am.
I kind of like that one though. That's
a good one.
Yeah, that's not a dad joke at all. That's pretty good.
Blockadile Dundee.
Yeah,
that's strong.
That's really what I'm here to contribute. Jason, you talked about everything. I mean, the defense against Wake Forest was elite. Wake Forest is not an elite offensive team by any measure. So it's not like Duke can expect to be blocking every single shot. I think they blocked like something like 18 or 20% of Wake's shots in this game, and just were overwhelming them. And yeah, that moment of Childress missing the easy layup is just, it tells you how scared overmatched teams are against Duke, because sometimes, Duke is often one of the 10 or so best teams in the country. And when teams that are, say, like non-tournament qualifying teams play teams like that, there's an element of just like, well, they're just bigger and better than us, but we can still sort of fight with them. Wake didn't even look like that against Duke. They were playing scared. They had a little bit of confidence in the first half because they were keeping it close and Duke was missing a few shots. And I said to the friends I was watching the game with, I was like, Duke's gonna just win this game by 20. Like it didn't feel competitive much at all. Even though Wake was sort of back and forth in the first half, it was like, we're just going to run them down. And sure enough, in the second half, they kind of just lost steam. Like they couldn't keep up with Duke for 40 minutes. So overall, a good, but not especially telling performance from Duke against Wake Forest. I was glad that the Blue Devils had the opportunity to follow up with that in Tallahassee and really show what they looked like against a big nationally ranked Florida State team.
This edition of the Duke Basketball Report podcast is brought to you by our fine friends at Bird Campbell. You can find them in Texas and Florida, a pair of former Dukies. I'm not going to edit that out. That was kind of funny. Jamie Campbell and Tucker Bird, a pair of former Dukies who have gone on to form a fabulous law firm. Find them on the web at birdcampbell.com, BYRDCAMPBELL.com. Bird Campbell means business. All right, compadres, Duke has a pair of big games this week. There's no simple way to say it. We are going to be playing the number one team in the country, even though we're also the number one team in the country. That's the Virginia Cavaliers. But before we get to Virginia, we've got a game against Syracuse. Syracuse always plays Duke tough. This is the week, guys, of playing teams that play slowly. Syracuse, 272nd in tempo, in number of possessions per game. Virginia, dead last, 353rd in possessions per game. Duke likes to play fast. We're the 13th fastest team in the country. So Syracuse playing slow, Virginia playing slow, Duke wants to play fast. Whose style is going to win? I want to start. Let's put the Virginia game aside for a moment. Let's start with Syracuse. Donald, I'm going to go to you first. Talk to me about, first of all, this very disappointing Orange Men team that has not lived up to preseason rankings, preseason top 10, top 15 team, and they're looking like maybe a bubble team at this point. And talk about what you expect to see in this game.
Yeah, like I think you're leading off with the main thing. What Syracuse Orange team are we going to see tomorrow on Monday night? They beat Ohio State in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's the Syracuse that we had grown to." We were talking about. Like they lost to UConn, decent. Oregon, those are pretty decent teams. Buffalo, they lost at home and got really run out of their own gym by Buffalo. But I'm discrediting that because Buffalo is a really good team if you've seen them play basketball this year. Old Dominion at home, Georgia Tech at home. Like, I don't know what it is about the Orange that has been off this year, but I mean, like Ty's Battle has been playing pretty well for them. Brissett has also been playing pretty well for them, and Chukwu has kind of been one of their surprise guys that has contributed more than they thought they would. And still, you're talking about them, coming off of a 73-59 loss at home to Georgia Tech. That should never happen under Boeheim or any Syracuse team. They should not be losing to Georgia Tech at home by 14 points. So what are we going to see on Monday? You said it. It's going to be, you said slow. I think they would call it deliberate. And I would say it's a little bit of both. They're going to try and limit the number of possessions we have because in their mind, if we don't have as many possessions, we can't score as many points. But really what we have to do is, play the game that we've always been playing, get out into transition, because if we get into transition, they're not going to run with us. Hopefully Zion's back. They said after the game that he had double vision. And that's why he was kept out of the second half against Florida State. Hopefully that has recovered where he can play some minutes on Monday, because I think him on the floor means we're going to win this basketball game by a lot because they have no answer for him. RJ Barrett is going to need to have a good game as far as taking the ball to the rim, getting some of their guys in foul trouble. He can finish at the line. And if Cam Reddish can continue his little hot streak that he started over the past week, I think we're in really good shape against the Orange.
So the thing about Syracuse, they are a truly terrible shooting team from the perimeter, especially. I mean, just they hit less than 30% of their 3-pointers. They're one of the bottom 10 teams in the entire country in hitting 3-pointers.
And they're taking a lot too. It's not like they're taking 5 a game or something like that. They're taking a good chunk.
Yeah. They're putting it up there, and they are not hitting it at all. They only have 2 guys who hit better than 30% of their 3-pointers, and that's going to be a big problem for them. The key to me in this game is whether or not Duke is able to solve that Syracuse zone. Coach K obviously knows it really, really, really well, but Syracuse does a great job at forcing turnovers out of that zone. They do a really good job of protecting the rim. They're very good at blocking shots out of that zone, and it's hard to score points on them. I can't imagine there's a Duke team that doesn't get to this Duke team doesn't get to 80 points. I mean, we have, other than Texas Tech, we have managed to, score 80 plus points, every game this season. I don't see any way that Syracuse is able to score 80 and keep up with us. So, against Auburn, we only had 78, but for the most part, I mean, Duke's getting in the mid 80s to 90s. In virtually every game, if not more than that. And I just don't see how Syracuse keeps up with us. This game's got to be played in the 60s, maybe 72 or so, 70, 72 for Syracuse to have a chance at winning. It's just gonna be tough for them. They're not good enough on offense to keep up with us, I don't think, even though they are very, very good on defense. Sam, what do you got at Syracuse?
I just thinking about Duke on offense. Duke really wants Zion Williamson. Duke wants Zion Williamson in every game, but they really want Zion Williamson to be back at it in this game because I think he is going to end up playing that center spot in the, where he waits around at the free throw line against the Syracuse zone. Zion's sort of the perfect player for that because he has the ability to get to the rim easily from the free throw line just by dancing around defenders and hopefully, cutting through traffic, but also he has great passing vision. And that's sort of the key to beating the zone is being able to move the ball in and out of it as opposed to around the perimeter. Duke hasn't been prone this year to passing around the perimeter too much. They're good at getting the ball inside, and that's ultimately the way to disrupt the zone. We've talked about that before. I think Zion plays that role in this game, and you guys talked both about tempo. Jason, you really just alluded to it when talking about the point total. That's going to be the big indicator in Syracuse, and then we'll come back to it again against Virginia. Tempo is going to be big for Duke here. That they're playing in Cameron, so the momentum of the crowd will be behind them, and they'll hopefully be able to move the ball up and down the court quickly. Hopefully, get into scoring chances fast enough that Syracuse doesn't get to set the zone and it doesn't get to dictate the speed of the game, and then coming back to your point, Jason, about their 3-point percentage. Duke is going to be concerned, I think, after the Florida State game about the interior defense and making sure that they don't allow so many layups this time. And that's going to feed perfectly into defending a Syracuse team that doesn't really shoot that well. So look for Duke to pack the defense in, allow Syracuse to move the ball around on the perimeter, but not allow any kind of penetration, especially, again, if Zion is back on the floor. This should be a fairly easy win for the Blue Devils at home.
Yeah, most of the advanced metrics predict that Duke wins by 13 to 15 points, somewhere in that kind of ballpark. So let's put that Syracuse game aside and move on to Virginia. As I said, number one versus number one. Duke number one in one poll, Virginia number one in the other poll. When you look at the advanced metrics, when you look at things like Ken Pomeroy and the such, Duke and Virginia are really set apart from everyone else in the country by a fairly significant margin. And I'll start it off this way. This Virginia team is not like past Virginia teams. They are still great on defense. They are fabulous on defense, but they're much better offensively than they have been in the past. They're still playing really, really, really slow. Again, slowest tempo in the country. But once they actually get into their offense, they're fairly good. I'm terrified of this game. This is an excellent Virginia team. Sam, start off. What do you think we need to look for in this contest?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that Duke I like that Duke gets Virginia twice this year because it's always fun to see Duke playing the best as often as possible, even if it means it's harder for them to win the conference. I'm glad that the first game is at home and that Duke gets to, all the freshmen get to see that Virginia pack line defense for the first time in a friendly environment as opposed to in Charlottesville. I think they've gotten a taste of what ACC road environments can look like when they're really on point as they were in Tallahassee, but this is going to be a good game to have at home. So coming back, tempo, of course, Jason, as you mentioned, is sort of the key here. Is Virginia going to dictate the tempo and we're going to play closer to 60 possessions in the game, or is it going to be played at Duke speed, which is closer to 75 possessions a game? That's the big difference in the styles of these two teams. Both are really efficient at either end of the court. It's amazing how, thinking about the tempo, Jason, you said it, that they have the slowest tempo in the country. It seems like they actually have the slowest team in the country every single year. It's not that they are ranked 320th in the country. They're always 353rd. They always play at the slowest pace. They always make you play their game. They always make the game end in the 50s. Although this year, because it seems like they've stepped it up a notch, they're really blowing opponents out. I don't know. You might have to go. Well, I was going to say you might have to go back to the tournament to look for a game they haven't been in a blowout yet. But I guess that was also a blowout in the tournament. So look for Duke in this game to try to speed up the tempo, to try to play at Zion speed and not at Kyle Guy speed and not at Diakite speed. Virginia's got lots of dudes who are able to lock it down on defense and they play very well. They play defense very well together and showed against a Florida State team that Duke obviously was back and forth with. Virginia just stomped that Florida State team. Granted that it was a home game and everything, but we have seen we have seen their ability to really get after teams this year. And Jason, as you noted, it really is Duke and Virginia as like 1 and 1A as the best teams according to the advanced metrics, and then everybody else is behind them. These are, to this point in the season, the 2 best teams in the country, like pretty far and away as far as the metrics go. So I'm excited to be at this game. College game day is going to be there, which is awesome and always a good time. So it's going to be hopefully it's going to be pretty lit in Cameron on Saturday night.
By the way, a scary thing about Virginia, really scary thing, like their guys are, this is not like all seniors. Like if they bothered to stick around, and I think DeAndre Hunter is probably going to turn pro, but if they bothered to stick around, like Hunter's a sophomore, Kyle Guy's a junior, Ty Jerome's a junior, Braxton Key's a junior, Diatike is a junior. Jack Salt is a senior, but he's like sort of the least talented. He's just a big in the post. Kahit Clark's a freshman. This is a team. They could be real. They've been good for a while, and we know that the style that Tony Bennett has his teams play, that the way he teaches that pack line defense, is truly impressive. And no matter who they run out, but Virginia team could be good for a long time. Donald, tell me what player on Virginia we should really be looking at. Who's the key matchup for them? It's got to be DeAndre Hunter, right? He's the one athlete on that team who really matches up with Duke's stud wings, right?
Yeah, I like that matchup that he has, especially on the wings. I'm wondering who they put on him. Was it going to be Cam Reddish or is it going to be RJ Barrett? I would look to see Reddish start against Hunter at first. And they may have a lot of switching and stuff, but really, guys, this game, this is how I build this game. What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? This is Duke and Virginia. And honestly, if things go well, the way we think they could this year, this could be the first of 3, maybe 4 chapters of this of this season rivalry between these 2 teams. So I'm really looking forward to this game simply because I want to see how we've seen how our team plays, against Texas Tech and teams like that. But I want to see how when someone says this team is better than you, and they're arguing that this team is better than you, I want to see how our guys react to that. We've seen us play some very, very good teams so far this year. But Virginia might be the best team we face all year, and we're going to face them more than once. So I like Sam. I'm glad this game is in Cameron to start. I like that we'll have hopefully the Cameron Crazies are going to be just ready to go in full season form. And really, this game is going to be one where I don't think you're going to want to blink because it's going to be one of those games that every action-packed second is going to be incredible basketball to watch from either perspective or even neutral perspective. So I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully everybody is back. I hope Zion is ready to go tomorrow. But even on Saturday night, this is going to be that game where get ready to go and tell all your friends that you're not going out Saturday night. You're watching this game.
So the last thing I'll add about UVA, and you have to talk about their defense. That's what I want to talk about because their defense is unreal. They are the best team in the country at stopping you from hitting 3-pointers. Opposing teams only hit 24.5% of their threes against UVA. Not even 25%. 24% of 3-pointers get hit against UVA. That's a scary number. The good thing I would say for the team, despite Cam Reddish, having a really good game against Florida State, we're not a team that takes a ton of 3-pointers, and we're not a team that relies on the 3-pointer to score a lot. We do most of our scoring off the 2-point basket. Duke, by the way, is the third best 2-point field goal percentage team in the country. We hit almost 59% of our 2-point shots. That makes us third in the country on 2-point shooting. Virginia is very good at stopping 2-pointers also, but they are really great at stopping teams from hitting 3-pointers. And so for Duke in this game is that maybe The thing that Virginia is great at is not something that we need to be great at to win. That said, I'm not sure. It's so hard to get inside that damn pack line defense. I don't know that you can beat Virginia without hitting some threes. So I love the way you say irresistible force versus immovable object. I know you're talking about pace. I think the irresistible force is Virginia's defense and their ability to stop teams from hitting a high percentage, and the immovable object is Duke's ability to hit a high percentage of our 2-point shots, especially. If we only hit 45%, 45% of our 2-pointers, we're not winning this game. And that's just, that's it. And it's got to happen. All right, guys, we are getting ready to wrap things up. Parting shot player of the week is what we have left. Let's start with player of the week, and it is a challenge because there was a clear player of the week coming out of that Wake Forest game when Zion Williamson was unreal, unhuman, and then he didn't get to play the second half of the Florida State game. So, Sam, I will go to you first. Are you sticking with Zion based on that incredible performance, or are you going with someone else for player of the week?
Only because I haven't given it to him yet this year. Let's give it to Cam Reddish for a near buzzer beater against Florida State. That's the kind of highlight that we are going to remember for a long time. And even though Zion and the block party and the blocks, I guess, came to party on Tuesday night against Wake, the big game this weekend was the one against Florida State.
I like your rationale. Donald, who you got?
I'm so glad that Sam went with Cam Reddish. So I can go with RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett, 21 points against Wake, 32 points against Florida State. Needed every one of those 32 points. And really, when Zion fell against Florida State, he stepped up in a big way and assumed the scoring along with Cam Reddish. So with all respect to all the other guys, I'm going to go with RJ Barrett for the entire week's performance and how he stepped up.
Donald, I agree with you. I'm also going with RJ Barrett as player of the week. Cam Reddish doesn't get a chance to hit that huge 3-pointer to win that game against Florida State without RJ absolutely taking over the game for long stretches of the second half. As we indicated, he had a pretty nice game against Wake Forest as well with 21.7 assists. Very efficient. His shooting. A lot of people were complaining about his shooting efficiency, and I think this year he showed this week he was much more efficient again. Hit half his shots, which is what we need from a guy like that is carrying the offensive load so much. So I'm going to RJ as my player of the week. I can't believe if you had asked me after that Wake Forest game if it was possible to pick anyone other than Zion Williamson, I would have said it was impossible because he was unreal. But Zion, your eye, blame it on your eye. Your eye prevented you from winning player of the week this week. It's parting shot time. We're about to wrap it up. Donald, you get to go first.
All right, guys. So, Jason, this was your parting shot last week, but we actually have an update. Last week, the headline monitors for Shesheskyville gave out their annual black tenting test to all tenters who wished to join the tenting line for the UNC game. Jason, you had mentioned that this was going down this past week, and it did. Guys, I got a copy of the test. So I was going to, for my parting shot, give I know Sam has not taken this test, has not seen this test. So I'm going to give you a few questions and see how you do, and you can match up with the rest of the tenters. So, Sam, are you ready?
I wait. Before we do it, I just want to go ahead and say I've seen it, so I'm not going to take it. Even though I've seen it, I wouldn't be able to answer the questions correctly because I think the questions are freaking stupid. But fine, we can discuss that in a minute. It's a dumb test. This is not the right kind of test, in my opinion. But go ahead and ask your questions.
Okay, Sam. With that aside, are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so there are 4 sections. I'm going to take a question from each section. Okay, so the first one, the recruiting class this year, what were the final individual ESPN 100 rankings of each current freshman?
So RJ Barrett was 1, Cam
Mhm.
Reddish was 2, Zion Williamson was 3, and I think Trey Jones ended up 17 in the RSCI. I don't know what he ended up in ESPN, so I'm gonna guess. I'm just gonna guess 17 for Trey Jones. And then, do I need to come up with a number for Joey Baker as well?
That's correct.
I do. Okay.
Yeah.
Joey Baker's final ranking. Let's say I have no idea. He was probably something like 43.
Okay, you were pretty close. Okay, RJ was 1, Zion was 2, Cam was 3. Trey, you got it right on the number, 17, and Joey, 41.
Wow,
So you're pretty close.
That's better
Yeah, it was
than I
pretty
thought.
close.
All right.
And you would have got a point for each of those that you got right. Okay.
That is
Okay.
impressive, Sam. That was
Yeah.
pretty good.
Okay.
The
next
Joey
one,
Baker number was a complete guess.
Yeah.
So,
So the next one, how many points, blocks, and rebounds did Marquise Bolden have against Auburn?
what?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you.
this
This is part of the. It's stupid.
Wait.
All right, let's say, give me one hint. Did he have a good game that day?
This was Auburn,
Against
so he had a
Auburn?
great game.
Yeah, he had a great game.
Freaking
That's right.
awesome.
Yeah. Okay. He
His
had
best game in a Duke uniform.
his best game in a Duke uniform. He had 13 points, 9 rebounds, 5 blocks. What else? What other stats did I need?
No, those were the 3.
was it.
So you got the rebounds correct. He had 11 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 blocks against
All right.
Auburn.
In aggregate, I think I got the right total number. So
Yes.
that's something.
if this was soccer, you would be going to extra time. That's correct.
Great.
Um,
Excellent.
And so there's 2 quick ones. The largest margin of victory in a game this season, and which was the opponent? I think you know this one.
It was Stetson or Hartford. I'm gonna go with Stetson, and the final margin was like 72.
Okay, it was Stetson, but it was 64 points. It was
64
113
points.
to 49. In the
Yeah.
final question, who sponsored the tournament Duke played in over Thanksgiving break, and what is their main product?
It was Maui. It's the Maui Gyms Maui Invitational now,
Mhm.
and Maui Gym's main product is sunglasses.
That is correct.
All right.
So
It used to be EA Sports Maui
It used to be the
Invitational
EA
because
Sports
they used
when
to
they
have
changed a couple years ago. That is
right. They
correct.
had because they had the it was EA Sports, and the players would play in a video game tournament. Because I think
Mhm.
if I remember correctly, John Shire won the video game tournament in the 2007 Maui Invitational.
And they
then
always
Duke-
did the simulations too on EA to tell you
Right,
how the
right.
tournament was supposed to come out.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, Maui Gym is obviously a logical sponsor, but
Right.
but not as fun as EA Sports.
But yeah, so that
All
was
right,
a
so
test.
wait.
It was very a lot of the subject matter was 2018-19 season and stuff surrounding that. But as Jason will probably dive into, there was a lot of stuff you had to memorize, like stat lines and 3-point percentages
Yeah,
and
it was
how
so
people ranked in the ACC and nationwide. So there was a lot of that. But you know what, Jason, I like that because you have to separate these kids somehow. They all go to Duke University. They're all smart kids. So you have to figure out there's some questions that got to be difficult to try and separate some of these people because you can't have everybody scoring a perfect score.
But can they name all of Duke's
so
final
you-
4 years, or like something that's maybe more relevant to the whole program? I don't know.
Yeah. So
Go
the
ahead.
problem I have with it is, Donald, you happen to pick some of the more interesting questions that weren't as the rest of the questions on the test were incredibly heavy on, have you memorized final scores and stuff like that, and very precise stat kind of things that I just think it's just so it's silly. It's a memorization game, not a true fandom game. A fandom game would have been a lot more questions. Like I'll tell you what. Question number 1 should have been name every player on the team.
No,
that is one of the questions.
Spell Krzyzewski.
It is.
Yeah.
So
should be
the
the
very
first player
first
on
question,
every-
Jason, the very first question is name every player on the team, their position, and their hometowns.
Okay, that's fine.
That's
That's fine.
I
They were
think
just-
that's pretty fair. And then
Yeah,
the
but
second
they
question
were
was name the coaching staff and their actual titles. So like associate head
That's a
coach,
good one
strength
too,
and
because
conditioning, whatever.
they all moved around this year.
Correct.
Right. Those are good, but after those, it gets into all the stat kind of stuff, and I think there should be a little bit of history to it. You should have to name every Duke national title team in terms of what year they won it and who they beat in the final game. I mean, heck, in fact, you want to separate the wheat from the chaff. You should have to name every year. I'm not saying, you have to get, but there should be points for every year Duke made a Final Four and who won the national title that year. I can do that for Duke going back to
the 60s.
At least no, I can go back to 79.
Well, they didn't make the Final Four in
79,
Jason.
78. You mean
78.
Ooh.
Thank you, Sam. Yes.
Here's the thing.
Look,
there's going to be a point. There's going to be a point where, I mean, we're not talking about the whole line, right? This is for black tinting. So the winners of this have earned the right to have 10 of themselves out in Kville at all times. So this is not, we're not talking about, casual fans versus the diehards. These are all the diehards.
None of this is supposed to be fun.
Right. This is all the diehards. So I think the idea is, the questions that you have are fine, Jason, but they're probably assuming that every one of these people come into this knowing at least most of those questions. In fact, if not all of these questions. And here's the funny thing. If this test was administered when I was there, guys, I started following Duke basketball really 3 years before I arrived on campus. Now, was I a quick learner? Absolutely. But it is made to, I mean, if I had signed up for black tinting and you were asking me questions about like the 1978 Final Four, I would have told you, I don't know, Michigan probably played in it. So I think those sort of things is they had to find a fine line. And when you're talking about all the diehards, they probably like, you know what, let's just focus on this year's team because this year's team is why they're all in line for it. And I think that is probably why they opted to go the way they did. But those were some of the questions of the test that I think the test is now available on online somewhere. I can't remember where, but I got it. Shout out to the line monitors who were able to send me a copy of this test after it was administered. And we look forward to seeing you guys get lit next Saturday.
All right, Sam, your turn. What you got for a parting shot?
Well, as much as the I guess what's the terminology, like as much as the world change, it always stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
This week on Tuesday night, Duke played Wake Forest, of course, in the first half of the ACC doubleheader, the Big Four doubleheader, because then in the second game, NC State hosted UNC. And anyone who's ever seen an NC State versus UNC game knows that what's going to happen is NC State is going to feel like they're able to win the game, and then UNC is going to win the game. And that's exactly what happened the other night in Raleigh. I was watching the game again. I said I was watching the game, the first game with friends, the Duke Wake Forest game, and I said, Duke's going to win this game by 20, and that's just how it works. And then Duke won the game by 19 or 20 points. NC State, when NC State plays UNC, be it in Raleigh or in Chapel Hill, it's NC State's going to hang around in this game, but they're never going to take the lead. And UNC's never going to give them a chance. And sure enough, NC State loses the game to UNC 90-82. UNC plays really great down the stretch to sort of hold the Wolfpack at arm's length, and then UNC then promptly goes out this weekend and gets absolutely creamed by a not good Louisville team in Chapel Hill. So
wait, but on that note,
worst home loss in Roy Williams' career.
Yeah.
Look, on that note, I just want to point out that usually what ESPN does when the game is running too long is they say, hey, this game is starting on ESPN News or ESPN2. And once this game is concluded, we'll switch you back over to this channel and you can come back after the next commercial break. Well, yesterday, because UNC was getting the break speed off them, they mercy ruled them. They said, you know what? This UNC game is now going to be found on ESPN News. Duke Florida State is coming on right now. And it's not like they started and it was like tip-off was waiting. They're like waiting to the last possible moment. No. They went through all the intros. They were like,
no one wants to see this mess.
It was a full pregame. It was a full pregame.
It was a full pregame that they
canceled
normally do
UNC so they could show the full pregame. That's awesome.
Yeah. So shout out to ESPN for breaking out the mercy rule again. That was pretty fun.
Classic UNC versus NC State. And I'm sure that whenever they meet later in the season, the same thing will happen because the Wolfpack are maybe not the most doomed team against against UNC because, of course, that goes to the Clemson Tigers. But just year after year, it's so demoralizing. Wolfpack still having a pretty good season, regardless, and we'll see them coming up very soon. And I'm sure that they'll play the game of their lives when they play against Duke in the next couple of weeks. So my parting shot is the more the ACC changes, the more it stays the same.
So for my parting shot, gentlemen, earlier this week, Coach K was interviewed on Dan Patrick's radio show, and the entire interview is available online. You can watch it on YouTube. And there were two sort of takeaways I had from it that I just wanted to mention very quickly. The first was Dan Patrick promptly asked Coach K, "Hey, what'd you do for New Year's Eve? What'd you do for New Year's?" And this is what it takes to be the GOAT. This is what it takes to be the greatest. Coach K said, he's like, "New Year's? When was that? Wait." He goes, "Oh yeah, I was watching practice tape and I was getting our practice plans put together." He said the guys had the day off, but we were practicing the next day. So I had to watch the practice tape from the previous day and get together a practice plan for the next day. And I was just like, dude, really? I mean, you've been at this for like 40 years, 40, 50 years, something crazy like that. And you're still like, New Year's Eve, you're working on practice plans. It's like he never rests. That's how you get to be the best. But he also told a very, very funny story that is good advice for any man who is getting into a relationship with a woman, any man who is married or getting married. Coach K told the story about his daughter. He has 3 daughters, as you know. That should be a question on the test, by the way. Coach K's daughters, or Coach K's offspring, how many and what are their sexes? Sorry, I will get back on topic now. So he told the story about his oldest daughter was pregnant, and he was sitting around the table with his 3 daughters, including the pregnant one, and his wife. And his daughter said, Coach K, whatever, Dad, I guess, whatever she calls him. I'm sure she doesn't call him Coach K. Mike, Dad, whatever. She goes, "Dad, what should my daughter call you? What do you think you should be called?" And Coach K answered her, and he goes, "I was an idiot. I was stupid. Anytime a woman asks you a question, your answer should be, 'I don't know. What do you think?'" Instead, he answered her and he said, "Oh, I think the kids should call me Coach." And he said he then, for the next 30 minutes, was brutally attacked and berated by his wife and all 3 of his daughters about how Coach was not an appropriate nickname for a grandfather. He is actually called Poppy, which is a very appropriate nickname for a grandfather. In fact, my fa is known as Poppy by my kids. But he was like, whatever you do when a woman asks you a question, your answer should always be, "What do you think, sweetheart?"
Man, those Coach K, we don't get a lot of interviews with Coach K, but when he does make the occasional appearance on Dan Patrick, we always get the good stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's low volume, but it's high quality.
There was zero strategy. I was listening to it and I'm like, ooh, I'm going to pull out. There's going to be some great nugget about how he's instructing Zion to do this or that, or how he's structuring the team around
nothing
RJ.
Like that.
None of that. It was like telling stories about how he screwed up with his wife.
Hey, speaking of stories, I had just remembered this. Did you guys see the appearance that Jason Williams made on Duke Blue Planet this week, live with Nolan Smith?
Yes, I did see that.
So very briefly, I don't know. I guess they're doing these occasional Duke Blue Planet live things where they call alums and stuff. It was actually pretty fun, but
they did
Nolan
Justice like a week ago. I want to say.
Yeah, they had Justice Winslow on, but Jason Williams told the Coach K Samurai story that Shane Battier told us once upon a time. So So confirming the Coach K Samurai sword story, which is a good one. And if you don't remember, go back and listen to old episodes of Duke Basketball Report because they're on there too.
Nice, Sam. Good plug.
Yeah, you like that? You like that? Plugging our own show that people are already an hour into.
Folks, that is going to do it for us here on this edition of the DBR podcast. A very successful week for the Blue Devils as we go on the road in the ACC and win 2 games. This week we come home and we play 2 really important games. You can count on us to have very, very quick reaction to that Virginia game next week. Tune in for that. Until then, I am Jason Evans. I want to thank Sam Klein and Donald Wine for joining me on episode number 142 of the DBR podcast. It is now time for the Duke Band to play us out.